Hi everyone, this is Melissa Keller, Director of Events and Project Management for Vineyard Worship. We release new music on the first Friday of every month. Cherry Blossoms is Vineyard Worship's long-awaited monthly single for April 2020. Written by worship leader and songwriter Andy Squires, Cherry Blossoms is a song of immense hope that has been an underground phenomenon since its release in 2015. Featuring the voice of Emmy-nominated artist Dana J., this powerful anthem is already finding a home in churches around the world.
Well, I feel a warm wind blowing, melting all the sadness off of my soul, and I smell the sweet cherry blossoms pouring all the gladness into my soul. In winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come.
Find Cherry Blossoms and all of our monthly singles wherever you listen to music.
God does that kind of stuff. Like I said, you put your antenna up, you just obedient to what you hear. You don't even know why you're doing things a lot of the time. You don't know why you're writing the songs that you're writing, but you see it come about. Like you see just the hand of God releasing something, and then it's like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah. I see it. I still don't know why this record, but I don't think I'll know why until in hindsight, just the impact that the album had in this time and the reason why it was released in this time. The blessing is the same way. The timing of it, we didn't write it for the pandemic. We didn't even know there was going to be a pandemic, but to see the timing of it and to see how much of a beacon of hope it is to the world, God is just crazy like that, and so I just always want to be someone that has my antenna up and that's just faithful. If I feel God stirring something in me, that I'm faithful to steward it. I'm faithful to sit down and spend the time with him and spend the time in the song. And, I'm just faithful to take the steps he tells me to take. I've seen time and time again in my life that always has a purpose.
You're listening to the Ferment podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is Cody Carnes. Cody is a worship leader and a songwriter, recently having co-written the timely song, The Blessing.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at worshipteam.com. Worshipteam.com comes preloaded with over 12,000 songs, with new songs being added all the time. Hillsong, Bethel, Vineyard, Six Steps, Jesus Culture, just to name a few. Service building with Worship Team is a snap, and all the songs are completely legal and licensed. You can also find them on social media, Facebook at worshipteam.com, Twitter at worshipteam, Instagram at worshipteam_WT. Visit them at worshipteam.com for a free trial today. Complete worship planning with thousands of songs, easy interface, mobile apps, and legal rights for your church. All you need in one place, worshipteam.com.
Hey, what up, everybody? My name is Adam. You're listening to the Ferment podcast. Super, super happy to be with you today. My guest, very special guest, is Cody Carnes on the other side. Why don't you say hello, Cody?
Hey, how's it going?
It's
good to be here.
Hey, so happy to have you with us. Thanks for sitting down and spending a few moments with us this afternoon.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Hey, we just want to do what we always do on this podcast, which is just start by getting a little personal history. I know that you do a lot of stuff, but maybe there's things about you that people don't know, and maybe they've listened to your records, but they just don't know where you grew up and how you were raised up. So why don't you just tell everybody where you're from and maybe what your home life was like?
Yeah, so I grew up in a little bitty small town in West Texas, Big Spring, Texas. And it's where Friday Night Lights was based. If you've seen that TV show, that's exactly, you've got a perfect picture of where I grew up. All about football and oil and just small town country people, you know. Grew up there. I grew up in a musical family. My dad was a professional musician for 20 plus years. So I remember from literally before I can remember, I was playing music and into the whole thing. And so that's really all I did as a kid. I grew up just taking music lessons from age of 6, you know, on, and studying music all through school. I was in percussion and drum line and stuff like that. So I just was a kid just immersed in music my whole life. And then I remember, you know, leading worship. I grew up in church pretty much my whole life as well. And so leading worship when I was about 13 or 14, starting that, it was very natural. You know, I was a musician in a small town. There's not many of us. And so naturally, I'm the worship leader.
That's right.
And I remember just very early on, I knew I was in love with music, but I remember when I was 13 or 14, I started leading worship. I remember falling in love with it and just really, really loving the intersection between, you know, creativity and creating music and playing music and the presence of God, leading people to the presence of God. And I remember just falling in love with that. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of a country boy at heart. You know, it doesn't really come out too much, but I've definitely got like these country boy Texas roots in me. And
yeah, that stuff goes deep. It doesn't come out, like, you know.
It doesn't come out.
Yeah, if you're from Texas, you're just from Texas. That's all there is to it.
You're just from Texas, and you're proud of it always.
That's right.
You know, you always complain about barbecue everywhere else and Mexican food everywhere else. And
That's right. That's right. So am I hearing your story right? Did you grow up first playing drums? Like drumline stuff?
I did. Yeah. Drums was my first instrument. That's the instrument I remember my dad setting me on a drum kit, you know, at 3 years old and 4 years old. And I really kind of more hear those stories than I remember them. But my parents will tell me, yeah, he would sit me in his lap on a drum kit at 3 and put drumsticks in my hands. And he would kind of play drums. And he had to play drums open-handed, you know, which means most drummers play cross-handed. But because my arms are so short, he had to play drums open-handed with me. And so I actually grew up learning how to play drums like ambidextrously. I can play kind of with both.
That's right.
Know, open-handed or cross-handed. If you're a drummer, that makes sense.
You can sit in the Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, drums was my main instrument until I was about 17, 18. Like I thought when I was a kid and I was kind of playing in bands and stuff like that, when I was studying drums in school, I kind of thought that's what I would do for a career. You know, I thought maybe I'll become a drummer and play, you know, my dad was super into country music when I was a kid. So I was like, maybe I'll grow up and play for some country artist. I don't know.
Yeah.
And but it wasn't until I started kind of leading worship that I realized that, you know, maybe I wasn't supposed to be a drummer, you know, and now I'm super rusty on drums. Like that's actually a dream of mine is to have a space in my house. I don't have it yet. I got kids. And so I don't have a space, but to have a space or a studio one day that I could set up a drum kit and just like go to town. Cause I would love to like just have the chops again, just for my own, you know, personal hobby, you know, so.
I feel you. Well, listen, drums are the most fun instrument to play. Like I like them all, but it's the most fun.
Yeah, it is the most fun.
You said your dad was a professional musician. What did your dad play? Or was he like a utility guy, played everything?
He played a lot of stuff. He was primarily a bass player. I'm a bass player now too. You know, that's actually my favorite instrument now. And I think it kind of comes from him. You know, I have this like 78 jazz bass that was his from literally he bought it brand new. So he's owned it for the lifetime of the bass. And he gave that to me as a graduation present when I was 18. And so I think that really inspired, you know, me to fall in love with that instrument. But yeah, he was a bass player. He played Western swing music, which a lot of people don't know what that is. But if you do know, you know that it's like very complex. And it's got this kind of swing dance root to it. And, but it's Western in the sense that it's kind of a country version of that. And so it's very like for a bass player, for any instrument, it's very fast moving, you know, for the bass lines change every quarter note. Like it's like intense music to play. And the purpose of it really in Texas, it was massive because people would, they would gather in dance halls on the weekends, bring in their family, and people would dance and two-step. And
I was going to say, is that the two-step thing?
Yeah. You know, so it was kind of this like interesting, like familial kind of country club kind of vibe that was big all over Texas. So I grew up really playing that music. Like when I started playing drums, I started playing in Western swing because my dad would go out on the weekends and he would play, you know, at that point, he wasn't really doing it professionally. It was more of a hobby, but he would play on the weekends and I'd go with him. And so he taught me drums. And by the age of 10, I was playing like full, like 4-hour gigs with him on drums. He was playing bass. I was playing drums. And he would get a couple friends. One would play fiddle, one would play guitar, and they would all sing. And it was kind of just this like familial thing. And we'd go out and play, you know, 3 or 4 hour jobs on a Saturday night. And, you know, it was fun, man. I grew up in an environment where I was always like this young kid who was pretty good and kind of like people, you know, celebrating. And I had a ton of support growing up as a kid, music and things like that. So
part of what I hear in your story is that your dad raised you to be a drummer because he was a bass player. He wanted the rhythm section.
Yeah. Now that I have kids, I'm like, I see what you're doing.
Yeah, I see where this is going now.
That makes a lot of sense. I just was a magnet to it as a kid. Like, I just loved it. We turned an old shed in our backyard into a music room. Like my dad put drywall up and, you know, insulated it, put air conditioning in it, you know, and filled it with amps and guitars and drum set. He set up these massive, you know, 6 foot tall stereo speakers and a CD player so I could put in any record and play drums to it. And I would spend, you know, 2-3 hours a day out there just playing to all of these. At that time, it was like country, like Brooks and Dunn. Like, you know, I learned to play drums to 90s country music, you know? And so, yeah, that was a lot of my childhood. So I think I just was super drawn. I took it way further than he probably thought I ever would, but
that's great.
I'm thankful that he set me up that way.
So
it's awesome.
It's deeply in your blood.
Yes, very
okay,
much
so talk to me about being a worship leader, because you said a moment ago that you sort of like got into worship when you were a teenager, maybe 13 years old or so, and just at the youth group. Is that something that you were invited into, or was that the sort of thing where you were like, hey, I want to lead worship?
Yeah, it was kind of both. I mean, like I said, I grew up in a small town, so I think everybody was aware I was a musician. You know, like I said, I was very active by the time I was 13, you know, in music and things like that. So yeah, it was very much like there was a need, but also I had a massive desire to play music in any regard, you know. And I had friends who were a bit older than me that were already like involved in the worship team, and, you know, and I looked up to them. And so it was kind of a natural thing that they would kind of invite me in to play, you know, drums or guitar or whatever, you know, when they were leading worship. And and so I remember when he graduated, he was like 3 years older than me. So when he graduated high school, you know, I was kind of like the next guy already kind of on the team that would lead. So like I really started leading like every week when I was like 15, when I was a freshman in high school. I led all through high school, and my youth group was, I grew up, you know, this is First Baptist Church, Big Spring, Texas. You know, there's about 50 kids in our youth group. You know, we met in this little room and had a full band, but in this little bitty like room with 2 Mackie speakers on sticks. And, you know, our youth pastor is back there mixing sound. You know?
That's what every youth pastor does. They all mix sound.
Totally. Yeah. And you know, it was awesome. And I remember I even developed this whole, like, I was kind of intense, like back then, as far as like, I was like, all right, if we're going to lead on Wednesdays, we've got to rehearse on Tuesdays because we got to be good, you know? And so it kind of became this thing where our like worship band, you know, it was the same band every week. So we became like a band. We became friends. And Tuesday night was our rehearsal night every time. And actually it was something that was like, I remember looking forward to that. Like it was like every week I was like, I can't wait for Tuesday night, you know, get together with the band and learn these songs. And so back then I was like building set lists and, you know, working out parts, listening to records, and like, hey, producing worship sets, you know, kind of before I even knew what that meant. And and it was fun. And I remember our youth pastor, like after a year, was like, man, like our band is really good.
Yeah.
And we started like playing like kind of more regional, like, conferences and, Disciple Nows and things like that, but yeah.
It's amazing how many probably just musicians in the world, whether in the worship space, the faith space, or general market, started exactly like you did, just playing in a youth group, because you play every week.
There's so many pop stars that started in church and
that's
great
right.
producers and songwriters that.
Yeah, you get to play and you get to sing every single week.
Yeah, and there's honestly no pressure on it. Like, it's okay if you're not that good. It's a safe space to learn. That's a beautiful thing about church in regards of music, and that it's like, it's so inclusive. You can learn as you go and you can serve. And yeah, and there's a place to literally, you need music every single week.
Yes. And
there's not many spaces, even in the professional touring space. Like, that's not true. You tour 3 weeks on and then you're off for a few months. Like, there's not a need to play every single week other than church. It kind of keeps your chops up too. When we come home from tour, we're leading in church. And so we kind of always have this like fluidity to it. And it's really nice.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, I was wondering if maybe we could switch gears slightly here and just talk about songs, because you're a worship leader, but you're also a songwriter. Where do songs come from for you?
Oh man, they like all different places. I think I feel like I'm always on this journey, or this, I've always got my like antenna tuned to like trying to find frequencies. I feel like I've got this thing in my spirit, I've got this antenna up to just kind of always hearing the Lord, like what's God speaking? And, am I supposed to write something right now? Is there a song that God kind of is there a message that God kind of wants to bring to the earth right now? And as a church songwriter, like, is there something I need to do to help that, and that's kind of always my like posture. That's kind of always my heart. I'm always kind of just listening. And I think I miss it a lot of times probably, but so a song usually will start with like an idea that comes from that, like a burden. I feel like, man, either one, I'm having encounters with God and I just am writing out of it, which is my favorite way to write, just meeting with God myself. And naturally, because I'm a songwriter, I'm going to express, those encounters with God I'm having, they're going to come out in music. They're going to come out with me sitting at a piano and a microphone in my studio and just kind of singing and, and a lot of times they're burdens. They're like, I bet, if you interviewed any church songwriter, I think they would say this, like, you feel this like responsibility to steward what God's giving you. And you feel this responsibility, like you want to be trusted. You want to be trusted by the Holy Spirit to give something that he's wanting to say to the church. I mean, that's an insane thing to think about, first of all, but it's how he works. It's one of the ways that he speaks to the church. It's one of the ways that he puts words in the mouth of the church to sing at a certain time. And you can look at it, it's consistent through every season. You can look at what songs are being written right now and how prophetic they were before anybody knew the season that we'd be stepping into, that we're in right now, and this quarantine and what God's doing. I believe there's like a massive awakening that's coming to the world, and just awakening to Jesus and the hope of Jesus, because everything is so shaken right now and people are alone and they're having to come to terms with their soul. So you look back at, a year ago, songs started coming out about awake. Hillsong released an album, Awake. And I've got a song on my record that the light in, the first line is like, it's time for the sleeper to wake. It's time for the old winds to change. I hear the Spirit say it's time, so you've got these things, you'll see these consistent like threads through worship music. And I love when that happens, because it's not like we all get together every year in a meeting room, like, okay, what are we going to write this year?
Clearly this isn't some global conspiracy to
have a global songwriting summit, although that would probably be awesome, but that actually might make it not as special, But yeah, we don't do that. Like, so if you see consistencies through worship music, and it's not that we're like listening to each other and we're copying, like nobody wants to do that either. So if you see a consistent thread through stuff, that's the Holy Spirit speaking to people. And that's a good indicator to tell, like, this is something that God is wanting to say right now, So all that to say that, yeah, they just come from those moments of just feeling this burning thing in my heart to write and to put down. And a lot of times they're stumbled into, a lot of times you're just sitting down and you don't know that you're going to write a song that day, or you don't even know that you're going to write a great song, or a song that years from now, you'll look back and it went around the world. Like you don't know that when you're writing. You're just trying to be a good steward of it, you know? And so a lot of times I'll get ideas started like that. I'll get a song kind of maybe a third or halfway written or something down, some kind of way to flush out the idea I'm feeling. And then a lot of times I take it to other people. I love to collaborate, love to co-write. There's so many amazing people, and I'm in Nashville. There's so many amazing people in Nashville. There's so many amazing people in the global church, songwriters that we all love to collaborate with each other. You know, me and Phil Wickham were texting yesterday about this whole thing, and we're talking about things God's speaking, and that's just how things get started oftentimes. Like, let's write about this, or here's a chorus idea I have, or, you know, all that to say. And wherever you're a songwriter, like, you could do that with anyone. Like, you could collaborate with anybody, you know, get to know other songwriters and where you are in your church and your town, maybe regionally or whatever that is. Maybe if you go to a conference, like Worship Together conference or Vineyard conference, or what, you know, whatever it is, like maybe get to know other people and build those relationships and collaborate with the people that you have, that you know right now. And, you know, oftentimes friends of mine will send text, we'll write songs over text, just here's a voice memo chorus idea. And then they'll send back, okay, how about like here's some ideas and here's some things. And, oh, I like that. Let's put those two things together. Like, I have text threads of that kind of stuff. That's how a lot of songs get written. You know, there's so many ways to do it.
Yeah. The technology is nice, especially when you're texting. You can come back to it. You don't have to do it right now. Maybe tomorrow sometimes, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can just keep it going. I'm also interested, do songs come quickly for you, or do you have to sit on songs for a long time? I mean, I know there's exceptions to the rule, but I'm always interested with writers, what their process is like when it comes to how fast songs tend to come.
I've had probably equal situations of both. I think the consistent thing through that is you just kind of know when a song is right. And there's just a feeling in it where I think the best way I describe it is like, you know, if I listen through a song, if kind of every line and like every melody excites me, if I'm excited to sing a certain section, or if I'm excited to sing the bridge, and then when I get done with the bridge, if I'm like excited to sing the chorus, like if everything kind of makes me feel like, yes, that's kind of my gauge, I guess. And oftentimes when I listen through a song, I'll listen through and think, that feels a little weak. That line lyrically feels a little like doesn't really fit, or just doesn't feel like it's good. We could make it better. Or that melody doesn't really, when I sing it, it doesn't feel good to sing, or I can't hear people sing them, those kind of things. So that really gauges for me when a song is done or not. And, you know, I've had songs that have taken 6 months to write for that reason, you know, just the collaboration took a long time. Then the kind of editing took a long time. And, you know, I've learned not to rush songs. Like if I don't feel like the whole thing is done, if I listen through and things kind of ping me weird, I've learned just to let them brew, you know, let them sit, kind of come back at them when you feel like, you know, be diligent to finish, but also don't rush, don't settle, you know. And then there's been songs like that literally have been written in 3 hours and I thought they were perfect. I've never, and the other writers that were writing on them, we've never like questioned. We've never thought that it should be any different. Like everybody just agrees. Like
nothing changed.
You know, nothing else was that way. Like we wrote Nothing Else in 3 hours, and it was such a special moment. And I felt like we communicated the message of that song in such like to me the right way, what I wanted to say, that I never wanted to tweak it. I never wanted to change it. And the blessing was that way, written in 3 hours. Like we all knew that it was special, and that we never really questioned if we should change anything, you know. But other songs, you know, Run to the Father was a 6-month tweak. Run to the Father was like writing the song. We didn't write the bridge the day we wrote the verses and chorus, so we didn't have a bridge. And then the bridge was written over text threads and chains over the course of a couple months. And then it was like, we still weren't really sure about it. We just kind of were changing things. And so I was leading it live, and I was trying different bridges, and you know, it's like all kinds of things like that. There's all kinds of processes, but really the thread is when you get it to where you just love every part of it. And I think you know that it's done.
Well, since you mentioned the blessing, I wanted to ask you about that. You said that song was written in 3 hours, which is interesting because the way I kind of had my question written down even from this morning is, how did that song happen? And in my mind, I use the word happen on purpose because it feels like a song that happened. Just even when I listen to it, it feels like less of a song that was written. It feels more like a song that just happened.
Exactly what happened.
Okay, yeah. So what went on there?
Man, I get chills just even thinking about it. Like, it's crazy. But so Kari and I were writing. We were already writing with Chris and Steven in Charlotte. We started that whole journey by just Chris asked us to come lead worship on a weekend. So, we'd been planning that for a while, and then we said, hey, what if we wrote, while we're there? Okay, let's tack on an extra day and let's come in early and let's write. So we sat down that day to write, and we actually wrote a different song than the blessing first. So we spent from about 10 or about 11 o'clock to about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock writing that day. And we wrote a different song. And we were sitting down, and we thought we were done. We were sitting down to demo that song, record it, just get something down to remember it. And while we were like starting to demo, we were about to start demoing. We were kind of playing in the key of B because that song was in B, and we were just kind of messing around, getting the recording set up. Pastor Steven kind of picked up a guitar, and he started singing this thing around like the Aaronic blessing, number 6 blessing. And it was like kind of totally different lyrics, totally different melody than what's there now. But it was the general idea of like, he was just, like I said earlier, he was just fishing, like he was kind of hearing something and he was just kind of digging and like putting his antenna up, So we kind of stopped demoing for a second. We just kind of kept playing in B, kind of kept going and let him kind of flush it out. And he was like, man, I've been wanting to write a song around this blessing for a long time. And he was like, do you feel like we should chase this, or do you feel like we should just demo and be done? And we were all kind of like, yeah, let's chase it. Let's see what happens. We're here, why not? So we started going down this road, and, then it just kind of all fell into place. We wrote the verse first. I remember the verse of the song came because he said, he was kind of taking the blessing, but like rewriting it, like, kind of putting creative lyrics to it, which is very normal to do in songwriting. Take a scripture, write it kind of in a new way with the same theme, same message. And then he said, you know what? No, I think it needs to be like the exact translation. And so I remember I was like, okay, well, so I went and looked through a few different translations, and I found one. And I remember reading the translation and typing it out in my notes. And I remember immediately, like light bulb download moment from heaven kind of thing, immediately hearing a melody. And so I was like, okay. And it all fit to me. And I immediately kind of knew the chords, and it was just this weird thing. And so I said, hey, what about this? And so I play, and then I play the melody and the chords that you hear in the song, not knowing it would be the melody. But I was like, what do you think of this? And I remember Steven and Chris going, yeah, that's it. And I was like, wait, really? Like that easy? Like we're not gonna tweak it, Like, no, that's it. And I remember my translation was God bless you, God keep you, the one I was reading. And he was like, the only thing I think is like, that sounds a little bit like a sneeze to me. Like, why don't we say the Lord bless you?
That's right. Yes.
Make it, the Lord turn his face towards you. But that was it. Like literally the verse was written just like that. And then it was I remember us getting on to like the thought of what if the chorus was just amens? And so that probably, took the longest just to find the right melody for the amens. We had all these different melodies for it, and kind of searching and searching and searching. And while we were writing the melody for amen, Kari kind of went off in her own little world. She started just kind of singing. If you go on my Instagram, I posted a voice memo of this happening, but she started singing like this. It's fine, you're fine. Your family, your children, their children, this whole like declaration thing over families and children, And it's funny, you could hear in that voice memo, like as soon as she started that, Pastor Steven goes, yeah,
because you can feel it.
That comes out, yeah. And so, she started that whole idea, and then we just started rolling on that together. And, we wrote that whole first section, and then that was kind of all it was for a bit, just the May His favor section. And then it was like, what if we may His presence, and then we like before you, above you, beneath you, behind you, around you, like, let's write a section. And so we tweaked those lyrics a little bit. We had above and beneath you at first. And then I think we replaced that with around and within you. That felt a bit more just like And then the next section was the same thing. And Chris Brown goes, in the morning, in the evening, you know, and we're like, oh, you know, and you're coming and you're going, you know, that blessing that we usually see, you know, above doorposts in people's homes or whatever, you know, those kind of things we thought. So it just fell out that way. And by the time we finished the bridge and the chorus melody, we sang it through and we were just like, man, this is special. And what's crazy is and even in that moment, we thought, man, this feels really special, but still didn't really have an idea of what the song would do, you know, just didn't even know we would lead it on the weekend. We literally talked about it after we wrote it thinking, hey, Kari and I are here because Kari and I sung the demo, you know, so it was like, hey, you guys are here leading worship this weekend. Like, why don't we just do this song? Like, this just feels like the right time because you guys are already here. We don't know when you'll be back, you know, like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds awesome. You know? So we end up leading it on the weekend, you know, and then realizing, wow, this song is special because we were watching people have this deep encounter in the room with it, could feel just the weight of it. And then also we were getting like texts from all around the world from friends, messages on Instagram, like an overwhelming response just to watching the Elevation live stream that people were watching and people sharing it. Like in the matter of 24 hours, like the amount of people that had shared it and spread it and people that had texted us and friends. And I mean, it was just like this overwhelming, like just realization of, okay, this is something that is special.
Dude, that's so amazing. It's so amazing. And what I love about that story is, I guess, two things. One would just be the tenacity and the sensitivity to chase a song down after you had already written one. Yeah, you're tired. You'd already accomplished something. You could have hung it up, but you didn't. So that's one thing I love. And then I just also love the picture of just collaboration. One person gives their part, and it helps another person give their part.
Yes, absolutely.
Really beautiful.
It's wild to be part of. I actually remember being tired. I remember when he asked, should we chase this? I thought, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, you know, you're after writing for 6, 7, 8 hours, like your brain is just fried. So, but that thought is crazy to me because I'm like, man, what if we would have missed?
Yeah,
that?
you could have.
Oh, like and maybe how many other songs have I missed?
That's right.
I don't know. That's, you know, that's a sovereignty of God.
Yeah, no, you can get lost there, but it's just interesting. And it's cool to think you're tired, but you lean in just a little bit and something really, really beautiful is on the other side. Let's talk about your new record just for a second, Run to the Father. I was just sort of interested. I mean, I know there's a track on the record called Run to the Father, but I'm interested in why you called the record Run to the Father.
Yeah.
Was there a reason there?
Yeah, this whole album came about over the course, writing the songs over the course of about a year, a little more than a year. And the first song I wrote for this album was Nothing Else. And that was like such a life-changing encounter that I had with God for my life. It was this massive, like, resetting my heart, resetting my focus on what really mattered, resetting the posture of my heart towards Jesus. You know, it's, I think I didn't realize, and I didn't have these ill intentions before, or I didn't even realize that my heart had kind of strayed in the sense of like wanting all these good things, asking for all these good things and asking for all this stuff. And then starting to kind of be frustrated that certain things weren't going the way I wanted to. And certain things, I was praying for things to happen and there were good things to pray for, you know? And so it wasn't that like I was rebellious and I wasn't believing in Jesus. It was that I was kind of more focused on what he was doing for me and giving me than I was just focused on him, you know? And so I was kind of going down this perpetual slope of frustration in my life and just stress and tension and all this stuff. And Nothing Else was the moment where I came like about face. And it was like, oh, wow, my heart has gone down this road that it's just not healthy. And it's not actually what God's intended. And so it's just whole like, Jesus, I just want you, you know? And I got set free in that moment. I mean, I've been a different person ever since then. So that song was an encounter with God. A few months later, I wrote Run to the Father. It was an encounter with God I had. Just my relationship with God as a father is a whole long story about that. But basically, like, I've seen God fill in the father gaps in my life that I didn't have in my own father, you know, and I had a great father. You know, we had a great relationship when I was growing up, but there's still gaps, just like anybody. Like I'm going to leave gaps with my kids. I'm just not perfect. And I've literally watched God as a father fill in those gaps in my life. I've seen him speak affirmation to me and so many times. I've seen him give wisdom, like in situations that I shouldn't have had otherwise, like literally God just giving wisdom, telling me how to make decisions, telling me how to navigate conversations with, you know, as a husband, as a dad. You know, I've just seen it overwhelming my life. I know I have this relationship, you know, I've seen God be just such a great father. And so that song came out of an encounter with me when I was just feeling the thankfulness for that. I was feeling this overwhelming sense of, wow, you're so good, God. And it just, I wanted to write a song that kind of went through scripture even and highlighted all the things some of the things that God does as a father, just his characteristics and his nature. And so that's where that song came out of. So, and then every song along the way, every song was written out of encounters with God, just different moments I was having with God. And so Run to the Father really thematically for me encapsulated the whole album in the sense that I really am praying that these songs lead people to encounters with God. You know, I heard, you know, a legend in the faith say to a group of songwriters a few years ago, I heard him say, write songs out of encounters with God, because when you do, it's like those encounters get locked up in that song. And every time that song is heard or sung in a church, played in a car, you know, played in a hospital, whatever it is, it's people get invited into those same encounters. It's like that encounter gets opened up again. Yeah. And so that really just inspired me to not just write songs, not just try to write great melodies and great lyrics and hooks and things like that. But as well as that, to really make sure I'm writing these encounters with God. And so Run to the Father is just that. Like I pray that it literally, these songs lead people into the presence of God, the presence of the Father. And also I think thematically the time that we're in, you know, this album released the day that the national emergency was declared in the United States for this whole situation that we're in. And obviously I didn't know it was going to happen. And so, but I think the title is also a little bit prophetic in that sense, where I felt like I needed to call it that. I didn't even really know why. And now when I look at it, it kind of like the album is like this. It's kind of like it's this like PSA now for everybody. It's like this, hey, anything you're dealing with right now, if you're dealing with fear, if you're looking for hope, if you're looking for peace, if you're looking for love and joy, like run to the Father.
That's right. I was even going to ask you what it was like releasing a new record during the moment of global pandemic.
You just don't, I mean, God does that kind of stuff. Like I said, you put your antenna up, you just obedient to what you hear. You don't even know why you're doing things a lot of times. You don't know why you're writing the songs that you're writing. You don't, but you see it come about. Like you see just the hand of God releasing something. And then it's like, oh, this is amazing. I see it, you know? So I still don't know why, you know, this record, I can speculate, but I don't think I'll know why until in hindsight, a year from now, 2 years from now, or, you know, just the impact that the album had in this time and the reason why it was released in this time. You know, the blessing is the same way. The blessing, the timing of it. We didn't write it for the pandemic. We didn't even know there was going to be a pandemic. But to see the timing of it and to see how much of a like beacon of hope it is to the world, you know, it's like God is just crazy like that, you know? And so I just always want to be someone that has my antenna up and that's just faithful. If I feel God stirring something in me, that I'm faithful to steward it. I'm faithful to sit down and spend the time with him and spend the time in the song. And, you know, I'm just faithful to take the steps he tells me to take, knowing I've seen time and time again in my life that always has a purpose.
That's the beautiful part about things like books and songs or things that are like records, right? They become containers for not just the moment that they were written in, but for other moments that maybe you and I could never imagine. They have ways of connecting to moments that we didn't know when we were writing it or producing it or being a part of it, but it's that place that the invisible hand of God can use it and can move through it.
And I've learned too, as a songwriter and artist, like you're never going to know all the impact that it has. And that's hard because I wish that I think that's going to be one of the joys of heaven, honestly, for every person that's living a life to advance the kingdom of God in whatever way that you're doing it. I think that's going to be one of the joys of heaven, is that we'll actually get to see all the stories, all the impact of our faithfulness, of our obedience. Like, we'll get to see. I mean, that's just, why would we not? You know, like, that's one of the best things you could ever think of happening, and heaven is going to be all of those things, you know. But, you know, as a songwriter and artist, like, you'll never really know the impact. And sometimes that's discouraging, because sometimes you feel like, because you're not seeing certain very visible fruit, and because maybe things go quiet, and because, like, you know, the only tangible things we have are like social media, or, you know, going, like, leading a song live and hearing a story or getting an email. I mean, that's only God. I mean, that's got to be only like a 5% of what's actually happening with people, you know, because I have encounters with music all the time, and I don't email those people. I don't tag them on Instagram. Like, I barely probably even tell them if they're friends of mine, because I just don't want to be like fangirling over them, you know? So if that's happening to me, I have to know that there's things happening with the stuff that I'm being obedient to do. I'm just never going to know. And so my point in saying that is just to encourage, like, if you're creating things and you're releasing things, all you're responsible to do, the definition of success, here we go. The definition of success, it isn't all the fruit and all the things that you can see. It's, did I do what God told me to do? Was I obedient to do what he told me to do? Was I obedient to write that down? Was I obedient to release that when he said to? You know, if I did that, then it's successful. And that's what I have to rest in. That's what I have to put my hope and trust in. And honestly, like, I've been tempted in this time to get stuck a little bit. And like, the record came out in the pandemic. Like, I actually don't know if that hurt it or helped it. I can't tell if, you know, and that messes with me, you know, but I have to go, no. I can't go there. Like, cause I'm never going to figure it out. And if I try to figure it out, I'm going to get stuck there, and I might actually miss the next thing that God wants to say. Like, God may be saying right now to me, he may be speaking another song for the next thing. Like, I've just got to keep moving forward. I've got to look at that and go, yep, you told me to do everything. I feel like I did everything you told me to do. And that's successful.
And clearly, no one can plan global pandemics, right? You know, none of us know that. So, I
mean, there's speculation.
Yes, exactly.
There's conspiracy speculation that people.
Oh man, so much. Well, let me change gears one more time here, because I know your time's about done, and I actually have another 2:00 Zoom too. Here's what I want to do to just finish up real quick. What's a perfect day?
Oh man. Right now, man, you asked me that when I'm literally been cooped in my house for like how many weeks and months.
Yeah. After 5 weeks of being cooped up, what's a perfect day?
Oh man, let's go. Let's take the family. Let's go to the beach.
Yes.
Let's get like our favorite food. You know, let's go down to the beach. Like, let's get a pizza, you know, at the beach, and let's go down. Let's sit in the sand, and with music and friends and spike ball. I mean, that to me, there's so many different renditions of that, but literally in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to get to the beach as soon as I can.
So you're beach people.
Oh, I love it all, man. I love the mountains.
Yeah, there
too.
you go.
Probably like the mountains a little better. Snowy mountains. I don't like to ski or anything. I'm weird like that. I literally just like to sit with a cup of coffee at the fireplace and like read or write a song, or just like,
that's right,
chill with that view. Like, that's my favorite. Oh man. Just, I can't, it's literally like asking somebody who's like very, very hungry, like, to go to the grocery store.
Yeah, what are you hungry for?
I can't even think about going to the beach right now because I can't. I'm stuck, you know.
No, I hear you.
It'll happen soon.
Okay, a few quick hitters. Here we go. Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out?
Oh, In-N-Out. They're both great.
One record you keep going back to?
Jared James. Probably nobody's ever heard of him.
All right.
He's Australian, kind of like pop artist. But his songwriting, his melodies are insane. So Jared James, I can't remember what the record's called. Okay. I think it's like his only full record he has.
Okay, we'll all check it out. Michael Jordan or LeBron?
Oh, man. God, that's super hard. I mean, who's the GOAT? I think MJ. You can't question that. But like personal connection, I didn't really grow up. I mean, Michael MJ was hot when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So I don't have this like connection to him in that way, except for Space Jam. That was one of my favorite movies. So I think right now in my life, LeBron, although I know the MJ documentary just
That's
released.
right. It's funny how many times the Space Jam movie comes up in people who are about our age. That's so funny.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because, that was that was like,
that's everything.
When we comprehend who Michael Jordan even was.
That's right. Okay. Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
All right. Last question. And this is what we end every podcast with. What are you dreaming of? What's the dream of your heart right now?
To just hang out with my friends again, to be back in church, to be back with people. I think about it all the time. I think about like the first time we're back in church together, the first time that we're back on tour, like the first night that we're in a room with people on a tour, like the times when all these people are coming back together again, and just the celebration of being together, like something we took so much for granted. I think that, I think God's just using this time to really just reset us, because I think our culture was they took that so much for granted, and social media and isolation was just becoming such a thing that you could easily just hole up in your house and be on social media and think that you were connected, but you actually weren't. And I think it's helping everyone realize, like, no, being face to face with people, connected, being in church, being together, like, it's so valuable. And I'm thankful for that reset. So I'm dreaming about that.
I'm going to have to say same on that. Same. I think that's a dream for a lot of us. Well, yeah. Cody, hey, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing a bit of your afternoon with us. Thanks for sharing your stories and just some of your heart and your life.
I loved it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're not too crazy in your house. And hopefully we get out sooner rather than later. Come on, Jesus. Help us out. Amen. All right, everybody. Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Corum here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. I just wanted to remind you of a couple things. First of all, check out Cherry Blossoms, our new single, wherever you listen to music. Also, join us on YouTube and Facebook Live, Sunday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern for our Vineyard Worship Together daily worship stream. All right, people, stay safe. Peace.